Woke Disney debate. Oh boy, here we go. It is crazy to me to see actual like YouTube commenters and like commentary people coming on to actual television.
Let's start with Disney. There's a huge civil war raging with Disney. We're trying to work out what is going wrong.
Disney are the DEI department.
People want to go see diverse films, but
No,
they
they
also want
don't.
to see things.
We used to joke about they're just checking boxes when they're literally checking boxes.
And they've stopped thinking about storytelling because they actually look down
Speaking
on
of checking boxes, do you remember whenever Blizzard had that minority power ranking system? And they had every person in Overwatch, like their like fucking minority tier list?
The woke brigade that's within their building.
They've got nowhere to go at this point.
They're just there for identity politics.
The House of Mouse is falling down. Disney's last 4 big releases have bombed at the box office. The company is currently no longer Hollywood's #1 film studio.
Damn.
Recent box office takings show even Marvel has lost its, well, Marvel. And critics say the reason is simple.
I think we can understand what Marvel, why that.
Disney's prioritized identity politics over entertainment, pushing messages audiences don't want or need to hear. So have they got a point? Well, to discuss all that and more, 2 titans of YouTube are returning to Uncensored by popular demand, Critical Drinker and Nerdrotic. I mean, otherwise known as Will and Gary, but I prefer your stage names, guys. We're going to stick to those. Also here to debate is Uncensored contributor Esther Krakow and the author for The Case for Cancel Culture, Ernest Owens.
The case for cancel culture. So he's the bad guy? This is the bad guy right here?
It's one of the worst named titles of a book, Ernest, I can ever envisage, but we'll let that pass. All right, let's start with Disney, because there's a huge civil war raging with Disney, with board members, investors, all trying to work out what is going wrong with the recent series of flops, because Disney is not used to having flops. Nelson Peltz, who's a serious investor in Disney, has criticized Disney's woke strategy in an interview with the Financial Times. He said, why do I have to have a Marvel movie that's all women? Not that I have anything against women, but why do I have to do that? Why do I need an all-black cast?
Well, the superhero thing, like the Marvel, like, you know who's watching Marvel was mostly guys. Guys are watching Marvel and they're taking their kids to see Marvel because they grew up with the characters. It's like, it's fucking obvious, right? I mean, of course guys are going to want to watch this. So, like, if you have a fucking Marvel movie that's got 3, like, C-list, like, female superheroes, all of the 35-year-old dads aren't going to be connected to that. Stop being sexist. Bro, it's a fact. It's a fact. You really think that everybody, like, you think, well, what do you think? How many people do you think are listening to Doctor Strange, Thor, Iron Man? You think it's a 50-50? You really think that's a 50-50? Come on. Give me a fucking break.
What do you think of this? I mean, Critical Drinker, there's no doubt Disney's in a pretty poor run at the moment. How much of that is down to woking up the movies?
I mean, I think it's definitely a factor, but it's part of a much bigger picture that incorporates other issues like a general decline in storytelling quality, a prioritization of quantity over quality, and like delving too much into identity politics, which by their nature are divisive. Of course they are. And so all of those different factors working together have slowly undermined their creative output to the point where all of their major franchises are failing. Star Wars is kind of a disaster at the moment.
I think that a really great example of this is, like, you look at Black Panther and about how, like, obviously it's Black Panther. Almost everybody in the movie is black. But everybody loved Black Panther because it was a good movie. It had a good storytelling. I think that good storytelling and that focus is actually the main reason why it's not successful. Like, the woke stuff is like, it's like a footnote. Like, it's like, oh, that makes it worse, right? But, like, that's not really why you don't like it.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe that used to be this money-printing behemoth is churned out flop after flop in recent years. And even their own, their own unique animation movies like Wish,
Haunted Mansion flop, Pixar flops all over the place.
Yes, exactly. All of those different aspects of their creative output have flopped, and they've got nowhere to go at this point. Clearly, something has to change. What they're doing is not working anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Nerdrotic, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, a comic book tale featuring a strong female lead.
Well, can we just fucking pretend? Can we just stop pretending for a second that anybody gives a fuck about She-Hulk? Nobody cares about that. The only people that care about She-Hulk are people with a fetish, all right? Let's be honest. Nobody gives a shit. It's a C-list character. Like, you want to hear the cool characters? Thor, Iron Man, Superman, Batman. Like, you got the Green Lantern. Even he's, like, you know, kind of B-list. Not the Aquaman. Like, you've got fucking, like, a Spider-Man. You got Wonder Woman. Like, yeah, even fucking the Hulk. The Hulk is cool. I mean, shit, Captain America. Like, those are the superheroes people give a shit about. Nobody gives a fuck about She-Hulk. Who the fuck cares about She-Hulk?
Marvels, a comic book movie featuring a diverse cast of strong female leads.
Like, what are you talking
Disney's first
about?
Animation featuring the first strong non-binary lead. All flops. Maybe a coincidence, maybe not. People who are intent on attacking Disney saying, well, this is because they're pursuing a strategy that's not based on just producing great movies. They're pursuing a strategy trying to appease the woke brigade who will come hunting for them if they deviate from the woke worldview. Your thoughts?
The woke brigade that's within their building, right? So,
Right.
you know, we see all these third-party companies in gaming that's going off right now. But like Disney is that third-party company. They are the DEI department. Lucasfilm is the DEI department. And now
This is a good point he brings up, because everybody tries to act like companies like Sweet Baby Inc. and shit are the ones that try to push this. But the reality is that the people that want, like Sweet Baby Inc. gets hired by these companies. Like, they use these people as a force multiplier for what they already want to do.
Marvel is too. And it was really easy for comic book fans to figure this out because we read the comic books. She-Hulk, for example, was a great comic book. It was reverent. It broke the fourth wall. That the famous run is by John Byrne. And I love the comic book. She-Hulk was a member of the Fantastic Four. This is one of my favorite female Marvel characters, and they destroyed her because they don't know what they're doing. I did a clip in one of my videos.
I think that even if they didn't, people just wouldn't have given a shit. Remember the Blue Beetle? Remember that movie came out? Everybody said the movie was great, but like it did really bad at the box office. Yeah, I never saw it. Yeah. And so like people thought the movie was great. They really liked the movie, but it was garbage. Really? I heard that the movie was pretty decent. And so wasn't that good? All right, that's fine. I think that the primary reason for this is just because the stories suck and the characters are irrelevant. I think it was fine. Yeah. That's what I heard.
Of all of the writers for most of the D Plus shows, I'm sorry, Disney Plus, stating that they didn't know anything about the comics and they didn't read the comics. And that's part of the reason, because they're just there for identity politics. It's simple.
I don't understand the reasoning behind, like, I mean, don't you have like media training? I mean, Disney obviously has like media training. Doesn't the don't the PR media training people say, don't tell the reporters that you don't know about the source material? I feel like that's such a bad thing to say. Shouldn't they just tell them not to say that?
About they're just checking boxes when they're literally checking boxes now,
right?
Which kills creativity.
Ernest, you'd be sitting there grimacing. I mean, it's clearly demonstrably not working, this strategy. And I've just looking from the outside, look at it and think, yeah, they have been too concerned about identity politics, too concerned about appeasing their very woke workforce. And they should have just stuck to doing what Disney does best, make great family films and make a ton of cash.
So there's a lot of misinformation. And I think the issue is that no one here is actually really reading the real strategy. The problem is several things. There's a missing implication. There has been...
I don't think that the internal strategy matters, because you're not talking about an internal strategy and whether the internal strategy is good. You're talking about the consumer perception of the internal strategy, which isn't really the internal strategy. So why would the internal strategy matter if consumer perception is that it's bad? It doesn't matter what your goal is if the goal fails.
Arguably, films that were super successful. Black Panther had a predominantly black cast,
True.
not all black cast.
True.
It made $1.3 billion at the box office and had a really successful sequel. The reality is that when you start saying woke or DEI...
Well, I didn't watch Black Panther 2, the Wakanda Forever one. I heard it wasn't very good. Is it accurate to say that it wasn't as good as the first one? And I think that what happens, Black Panther 2 is a great example. Because Black Panther 1, you want to know why Black Panther 1 was such a great movie? It's because of Killmonger. He was the reason why it was such a great movie. He was a perfect fucking villain. It's the same reason why Infinity War was so good. It's because of Thanos. Why was The Dark Knight so good? Because of the Joker. And so the problem is that it's not about whether it's white or black or woke or not woke. It doesn't really matter. It matters whether the story is compelling and interesting. And I loved the first story of Black Panther. I really thought it was great. And I remember, like, my mom, who was, like, super, super bro. She was based, all right? She watched Black Panther. She said it was good. She did. She said, fuck, it was a good movie. And that was it. Chadwick Boseman was pretty awesome as well. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, right? But, like, in terms of, like, what makes the difference between that and, like, a random superhero movie is having a compelling conflict that people can relate to and understand. That's what made it so good.
You know, there's another implication there where you're implying in many ways that what is the opposite of lack of diversity in those films? It's feeding to an all-white cast or majority white cast and the lack of diversity. I don't think that that's what Disney's trying to do.
Just like Rush Hour. Remember Rush Hour? It was the same thing. It was all white people.
That's what Hollywood should do because it doesn't reflect the society we live in. However, what's missing in this conversation is that the reason why a lot of these films are not doing as well is because many of them are spinoffs, sequels, or there's just overall fatigue in the market.
He's right. He's actually right. And I think that they're both right.
People want original stories. So I do think that rather than try to make this a culture war, which really it isn't, it's more of a change in taste from the audiences and what they want. Let's keep it 100. Pixar has not really made too many original films that have really been able to be fully marketed. And there's been an oversaturation of them. There's an oversaturation of Marvel. But if you look at other films elsewhere, there has seemed to be a trend of liking diversity, TV shows, streaming platforms. And so it seems to be a little bit intellectually dishonest to frame it in this way. I think there's another way to look at it.
I'll come to Esther at once. I mean, I would just say, my favorite movie the last few years was Top Gun Maverick because it just did what it said on the tin, right? The guys behaved like guys, the women behaved like women, bad guys got slotted, and the good guys were heroes. I mean, that used to be how movies got made in Hollywood. They celebrated the basics in life. Now they're too busy worrying about what the basics in life actually are. Esther, I want to play a clip from South Park. Take a look at it.
I think that whenever a movie tries to push a narrative so like Lord of the Rings is a classic story of the triumph of good over evil. And it's told in a heroic way. And it's also told very one-dimensionally. It's not like Sauron has a lot of good qualities. He's a bad guy. Or Saruman has a lot of good qualities. He's a bad guy. However, the story is good because it's not patronizing. I think that a lot of people feel patronized by modern media. They feel like, oh, well, why do you have to show this? Why do you have to, like replace this character, or like race swap or gender swap a character? Because I think the implication of that, you have to think about what the implication is in the mind of the consumer. And I'll kind of create like a parallel. And this is kind of an extreme parallel, but I don't think it's completely off base. How would you feel like if every time you went to like PetSmart to buy food for your pet, the person who was the cashier would remind you not to beat and abuse your pet? That would probably make you mad, wouldn't it? You wouldn't want to hear that from the person that works at PetSmart? I would be pissed. Yeah, exactly. Because it's the presupposition that you need to be told that. And I think that's what the issue is that people feel like they're being talked down to and they feel like they're being patronized. And in a way, like having to tell somebody not to be a bad person implies that you think that they don't have the mental capacity to understand that on their own. And I think that's another big issue as well, is because stories like, for example, and also like another reason why Black Panther was really good is because Killmonger's perspective wasn't caricatured. He had a point. He was right with a lot of things. He wasn't just like some stupid one-dimensional bad villain that just wants to do everything bad and is obviously some sort of like, parallel to like a real-life situation. Like Thanos is another one. It's because I think a lot of stories are afraid of making compelling villains with complex storylines because they're worried that those compelling villains would be seen as sympathetic by people who disagree with them politically in real life.
Is there a problem, people?
We were just discussing ideas of what to do with the new Prince Eric movie.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
Maybe we should go a different route than we did with Indiana Jones.
Fuck Indiana Jones, put a chick in it and make her name it gay!
Sure, yeah. Well, let's try that. Again.
Kathleen Kennedy is down on set right now ruining the new Bambi movie.
Put a diverse woman in it, make it gay!
Bambi's a baby deer.
Fuck baby deer, put a chick in it, make her gay!
Now, the thing about South Park, as Meghan and Harry can tell you, is that through their comedy, they often absolutely nail the truth. Esther, your thoughts?
Well, I think that the argument that they've not been making enough independent films, and that's why they've been flopping. Well, the independent films that they have made have also flopped because they've not been focusing on storytelling. They're always thinking, how can I have a transgender Muslim black woman in there? And they've stopped thinking about storytelling because they actually look down on the audience that they're targeting.
I think that a big problem with this, too, is messaging. And I think that Disney needs to rein in a lot of the people that do interviews and make sure that the people that do interviews don't start going off on tirades with this stuff. Because in a lot of cases, I think that people's perception of the movies would be a lot different if they didn't get these sound bites from like different actors or people that are working on the movie that want to like have they want to be able to make their statement about the world. Like Snow White. Snow White's a really great example. If the girl that played Snow White, if she never said a fucking thing, there wouldn't be even a fraction of as much controversy about it. Now, I'm not saying the movie would have done well, but the controversy wouldn't have existed. And I think that Disney is really fucking up by not telling these people to shut the fuck up because they're hurting the movie and they're damaging the whole thing. They're damaging the whole brand. And they're doing it, I think, for a selfish reason.
I also think there's another dynamic here, which is actually the media. So the media works against them. So if you actually just wanted to tell a story and the entire cast of that film was white, even before you watch the movie, all the promo will just be saturated by these sort of pink news articles saying, oh, it's sexist, it's homophobic, it's transgender. So even before the film comes out, you have media working against you. So in that...
I do think this is a very good point, and a good example of that is Final Fantasy 16. And also, I think that another component of that is that you have people that they're farming this media and they're farming this stuff in order to get attention and in order to create negativity. And I think that games media is especially bad with that because they're trying to look for these problems. It's like when you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And I think that's what's ending up happening is you have these people and they're looking for an instance so they can beat their drum and like be like, yeah, this is my pet issue, and see, these people aren't adhering to my pet issue. Like Hogwarts Legacy is a good example. Think about how much negative feedback that you get, that they got from Hogwarts Legacy. So like, I do think that companies do worry about this because a lot of companies haven't adapted to the reality that a lot of these mainstream news publications don't really have any sort of value. Like they're not adding anything or doing anything of like any real meaning or import. And I think you can tell that that's true whenever you look at the amount of people that are consuming the content. You look at Google Trends. You look at how many, you really think a website that's doing well would have 750 different ads on one page and 2 of them autoplay? Come on. They're down bad. It's obvious they're down bad.
The media will be easily disseminated. So that will kind of kill the buzz before anyone bothers to watch the film. And I think that's the issue. They've stopped respecting the audience and they feel the need to preach something.
And I think this also happens on the opposite direction, where if certainly like a certain character is like a woman, it's like an action story with like a female lead, or it's like black, or there's like some perceived wokeism, then people immediately think that it's there. And people start already creating content about how a story is woke without even knowing the nuance of the story at all. So this does happen both directions. Now, I think it's obviously much more in the other direction, but it does happen. And I think that the reason why it's happening is a direct reaction to other people trying to push their agenda into movies.
I just think that's so right. I just think Disney should go back to what they're good at. It's a fantastic company that used to make fantastic movies and hardly ever had a flop. because they knew their audience so well and they didn't attack their audience.
Movies were not sequels.
Sorry,
a lot of those movies were not sequels. A lot of those movies were not.
But going back to Black Panther, did Black Panther succeed because there were black people in it? No,
it was a great story.
It was a recognizable character that comic fans that I had been reading since I was 6 and 7 years old.
And the thing is, they tried to replicate the same exact
get a better
formula
mic.
for Black Panther with the second one, and it made half as much. Clearly,
half as
were
much.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
I want to be clear.
And no one talks about it anymore.
In his statement, I want to be clear.
I think it's a pretty good fucking proof positive that diversity isn't the only reason why these movies aren't doing well. If Black Panther 1 did really well and Black Panther 2 didn't. It's clearly not just because of that. I'm surprised this guy hasn't picked up on this. It's a good argument and he's not using it.
That Peltz did say in that interview that basically argued that the Marvels and Black Panther, he didn't even want to get Black Panther made. And in Iger's book that he came out in 2019, he referenced that they had to fight to get Black Panther to come out.
That was Ike Perlmutter, not Nelson Peltz.
Why? Yeah, right. Right. Why?
Who's backing Nelson Peltz? Why?
Right. Why?
They didn't think it would sell action figures, and he was obviously wrong on that one. And he didn't want Captain Marvel made either. But there's a lot of fish.
I think also another big reason is because Black Panther has a lot of political baggage too. Because, like, you know, the 1960s Black Panthers and shit like that. So it's probably just them being conflict adverse because of that as well. I mean, that's a very popular term that a lot of people know about. It's hard to... That's a reach? You think that's a reach? I don't think that's a reach. I think that's right in plain sight.
Marvel, and then when the sequel came out, which was the most predictable flop of all time, it flopped. It was their biggest flop. They didn't put any effort in it because they didn't put any... If you watch Captain Marvel and read the books that she was based on, she was Carol Danvers, she was Miss Marvel, she was a likable character. They turned her into a dude. And Kevin Feige is the one who put out the edict.
Well, and you also have to keep in mind, why did people not like Captain Marvel? A lot of the reasons why people didn't like Captain Marvel and why there was so much negative press around Captain Marvel is because Brie Larson kept saying a bunch of stupid shit in interviews. And it made people mad. So it's like, again, it's not even about the movie. It's about what the actors are saying about the movie that basically poisoned the well, and then people go into it poised, like ready to be mad. They're trying to not like it.
Said, we're going to make half of our characters women. That's where the MCU comes from. I didn't create it. Nobody created it. Kevin Feige created it. He's the one who said, I'm going to put down this edict and I'm going to start checking boxes. And that's exactly when they started failing, right after Captain Marvel. It's been all downhill from there. Very few of their movies have made money because the budgets have blown up beyond a record. We don't even know. We just learned that Doctor Strange cost around $300 million without marketing.
By the way, that's the same thing that they did to Barbie. Can I just point that out? I know comic books are not as popular as Barbie, but I'm a huge Barbie fan. And the people who made Barbie didn't bother to watch one of the 47 animated Barbie films. If you actually are a fan of Barbie, the Barbie film that was produced last year and made all that money, it was a complete abomination because they didn't even bother to actually do any research. This is the thing. They have activists instead of filmmakers. That's the problem. And no one wants to watch something that's preachy and boring.
Candace Owens Jr.
See, that's why it's good to have a good mic and not have whatever the fuck, bro. Like, come on, man. Like, you just got run over. I don't even know what the fuck he was saying. Like, you've got to buy a new mic, man.
Listen,
this is bad.
It's not a flop.
It's a flop.
Barbie did the thing. Barbie
was an abomination.
And so all this argument about woke and this and this, at the end of the day, it was a fresh, original concept. People want to go see diverse films, but they also want to see things.
No, they don't.
So there's nothing diverse about
people want to see
Barbie
good films.
Oh, it's ludicrous.
They don't care about diversity.
I don't think that there's any. I don't think people want to see or don't want to see diverse films. I think people want to see good films, and good films have diversity in them inherently with a lot of cases. Right? Like there's a lot of inherent diversity that happens in a lot of stories. It isn't. I don't know, like maybe this is just like me, right? And like how I grew up, but I feel like if you go towards like looking for the best people and finding people that you get along with really well, I find that oftentimes diversity manifests itself on its own. You don't need to like go and like force it because it will happen on its own. Now, I mean, I'm obviously like, you know, I'm in a very multicultural, like multiracial like place here. Like in Japan, it's going to be different, right? Or something like that, or in other places in the US. But I think that making it a focus in this way definitely like it makes people nervous to care about things because they don't know if the things are authentic or not.
To be clear, Barbie was not a film about diversity. It was a film bashing men, attacking the patriarchy, and saying that all the good things in the world are female. And the only funny thing about it was at the Oscars, it was all about Ryan Gosling. Ken had the last laugh as Margot Robbie sat in the seats, unwanted and unattended. And I love Margot Robbie, but let's not pretend what Barbie was. It was a box office smash, and as Esther said, an abomination. A man-bashing abomination. Talking of abominations, let's come to Joker 2, a musical. It's been announced that
I'm not sure, really, like, if... I think the marketing for Barbie was really good. It was crazy good. But, I mean, I don't know how well it's sold.
The sequel to Joker is going to be a jukebox musical.
Like, how much... Well, let me see. Oh, no, look at this, right? I mean, no, it's more. Look, right here. $1.4 billion. Like, I would say making $1.5 billion, like, I would consider this a W. That's pretty good. You know, like, that's all right.
Gaga, with up to 15 lip-synced cover songs. My heart sank when I heard this. Critical Drinker, what did your heart do?
I thought that the Joker 2 thing was stupid as well. I thought it was an unnecessary encore that nobody wanted.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. I mean, ultimately, it's all going to come down to the implementation.
We'll see. You're right.
Potentially, there's a way you could make this work. When I first heard that this is the route they were going to turn it into a musical, wasn't a fan. But I loved the first Joker movie. Told a great story. It wasn't mired in the comic book superhero movie genre. It was a story about a man gradually losing his way in society and a world that just didn't care about him. Fine, that sort of thing works perfectly. And it was great. Not sure I love this idea of turning it into a musical. I got a little bit of confidence in Todd Phillips as a director. He clearly knows what he's doing with this, but whether or not they can make this work, it is debatable. I think
Esther,
we're going to have to wait and see.
All musicals are diabolical?
I despise musicals. I mean, to be fair...
Thank you. Fucking based. I hate them too. It's like, anytime I heard something's a musical, it's like, oh, thank God. Now I don't have to watch it.
Baz Luhrmann has a hand in why I really hate
So
musicals. But I also think I don't really like his cinematic style, and what he did with Moulin Rouge I can't stand it. And it's not a genre I can take seriously. I think it works in theater, but it's
La La Land was great. I watched
it with my
daughter.
La La Land was horrible. It was unacceptable.
La La Land.
It was horrible. But I don't understand
Singing in the Rain. I mean,
the Joker character
really?
in a musical.
All musicals are terrible.
I think they're all
Singing
terrible.
in the Rain.
Okay, maybe Gone with the Wind. Maybe like there's 3 that are okay. But like, okay, so there's been 3 musicals that are okay in the last 80 years of cinema. I think that's a pretty bad fucking ratio. So maybe 5. Oh yeah, maybe 5.
Awful. I can't stand it.
Nerdrotic, come in here. I'll come to you, Ernest. Nerdrotic, all musicals are awful. Discuss.
Most of them are.
Okay.
There's a couple I like.
Yeah, sure.
But most of them are pretty horrible. Yeah. Just not my taste. But with Joker, I didn't think the first movie should exist, and then it became kind of a cultural event. I'm sure you remember the press around that. That was supposed to be some movie for incels. And I had
enabling
to walk through a metal detector to go in New York to go watch the movie in America because of all the press that was around it. That was going to.
Why would you go if you're an incel? Why would you go and like shoot other incels? Like, isn't that like friendly fire? Because if it's a movie for I mean, I just don't really see like the logic in this, right? Like that's like the last place you wouldn't go and shoot people.
Violence and all that crap. And the violence happened at Frozen 2 and not Joker. Thought the movie was great. I didn't think it needed to exist because ultimately the Joker doesn't need an origin. But I really don't think this sequel should exist. I love Todd Phillips as a filmmaker. Not a big fan of Lady Gaga. So, yeah, I'm skeptical on this.
Okay, Ernest?
Musicals are touch and go, but I think people like something that is original and fresh, and we haven't seen it. But I wouldn't count Gaga out, and I wouldn't count Todd Phillips out. I think that the cast is going to really drive it. It already has a great interest in the public. I'm open, and again, I'm not crazy about a lot of musicals.
My theory about musicals, Ernest, is that it's a bit like music. It's like an album, right? When you listen to an album for the first time, it's very rare that I listen to an album once and think, oh, that was fantastic. They grow on me, right? You listen to the same song a few times, and suddenly you're into it. And I felt the same about La La Land. First time I watched it, I didn't like it. I didn't get it. Second time I liked it a bit more. And the other night I watched it with my daughter, absolutely loved it because I knew all the songs.
Yeah.
You know? It's a bit like when you go to a concert. If they play their greatest hits at a concert, I'm a happy boy.
And it's also an original musical, which is my point. Like, you didn't see it on Broadway. It was made for the film. And so when you have, again, something that's different, people will watch it. Because if you're The Color Purple didn't do well, right? Because a lot of people was comparing it to Broadway, to the other movie. And so you have something to compare it with. Not everything can be Chicago, which I think is one of the best.
Well, it's like, again, like going back to that as an example, the reason why that's popular is because it's something that already existed. And that's what a lot of the really popular Marvel movies are, too. They're capitalizing on an existing IP that people already care about. It's not like, the Joker was like, random New York guy. The Joker was like the fucking main villain in Batman. And so they're capitalizing on a ton of nostalgia out of this.
Adapted musical to films ever, in my opinion.
Okay, let's turn to Sydney Sweeney, this cultural phenomenon, being called a double D antidote to woke. Canada's National Post posed the question: are Sydney Sweeney's breasts double D harbingers of the death of woke?
I think this is so cringe. I do. I'm gonna just say it. I think she's hot. She's definitely hot. But like the fixation that people have on it is like, I think it's just cringe. It is.
And they summarize the argument by saying,
and it's not anything against woke. Like, guys, is it woke to like women? What a stupid place to put your flag.
He is being chastised for desiring or admiring beauty because beauty is rare and exclusionary, and to exclude is to hate. Also, we've been scolded to accept by today's diversity, equity, and inclusion fanatics. We aren't supposed to admire Sweeney's beauty, but we've done it anyways. The times, they are changing. Critical drinker, are they changing? Has Sydney Sweeney's cleavage basically spelled the beginning of the end of woke?
I just love the idea that Sydney Sweeney's breasts have somehow become a political movement. I mean, that's the one aspect of politics I can definitely get into. But no, I mean, from this point of view, I don't know. There's been so many attempts to redefine beauty standards and foist different ideas upon us. But ultimately, the heart wants what the heart wants, I suppose. And when you see a young, attractive woman who's well endowed, shall we say, guys are going to like it. We're relatively simple creatures, and we're not all that difficult to please. And people are appreciating it. Sydney Sweeney herself seems to be very much aware of the attention that she's getting because of this, and she's happy to play into it, and as she should.
I don't think it's only. By the way, it's not only guys, is it, Esther?
I mean, I'm a tittyologist. I love boobs. I love nice boobs. I'm a bit jealous though because I feel like Sydney Sweeney and I are boob twins. But she gets all the double D attention, but I don't. Maybe because I'm not dressing.
I love how the producer full screens her after that. Producer, look at that.
Like I'm auditioning to be a wet nurse. Anyway.
Oh God!
You haven't seen Esther's pole dancing on her Instagram, by the way. You haven't lived.
But I think, look, she's unapologetic.
She's a breakout pole dancing sensation waiting to happen.
Well, I don't know, for my parents' sake. But look, I love that Sydney Sweeney's leaning into her femininity, her beauty, maybe a bit too much because I see a lot of boobs. But anyway, and men like boobs. It's not groundbreaking.
All right, Nerdrotic. I mean,
this isn't a political. It's not. It doesn't. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal.
I always think that the movie game in particular should have a premium on beauty. I don't want to see too many ugly people on screen. Sorry.
No, that's the problem we've been having is we have a lot of ugly people on screen. I don't want to identify.
Current screen.
He's right.
Accepted, obviously.
Current screen.
Yeah.
We're not
Silver
actors, it's
screen.
okay.
Yeah, I don't need to see myself reflected. I don't see some middle-aged, recovering alcoholic on the screen all the time. I don't. I want to see heroism. I want to see beauty. I want to see something to aspire to, something we normally don't see. Look what they did to Kelly Marie Tran in The Last Jedi. They completely uglified her, and she's a pretty girl. And they've been doing. I mean, they put a piece of metal over Scarlett Johansson's boobs in Endgame. That should be a crime.
Yes.
These are things.
That should be
they
a crime.
need to be free.
I agree, Ernest. It should be a crime. I agree.
So misogyny aside, I think that trying to
See, this is the problem that like people like this dude have, is they're so uptight they can't just laugh and have fun. Like, does he really think that these people actually hate women? It's like they're so uptight, bro. Like, it's just, jeez, bro. Like, he's fun apart. Yeah, it's like why? It's so like weird.
I need to admire the female form. Ernest.
Do you have some kind of
Since when did fancying hot women be misogyny?
I'm moving on. The try to make it like
Jesus,
this against
man.
the woke, I think again it's forcing a culture war that's just nonsense. But I will
It's
argue
like that's the thing is I agree with him. I think he's right. Like it's like what the fuck? Like what a stupid culture war to have over like some girl's boobs. Like I think it's weird. But like I think people need to understand this. A lot of it is like the way that like whenever you're trying to like court public opinion with things, a lot of it matters the way that you look. Here's a good example. Me. So, how many times have I said something on Twitter and it's technically true, but the way you fucking said it, the way you fucking went and you had to do it, you had to say it just like that, and you look that fucking way and you saying this shit, fuck you. That's it.
That if they think that Sydney Sweeney is the antidote to wokeism, then I would say that Taylor Swift is the person that's countering all of that.
No, she has no boobs. Well, she got a boob job, but like, what are you talking about?
That's the point. That's the point. It doesn't matter. She is the antidote. That type of narrative. She's successful.
Guys, I want you to keep in mind that we're talking about this and not inflation. Like this is what everybody is tuning in to hear about, because who has bigger boobs is more accessible than the federal interest rate. That's the reality that we live in.
The right used to love her until she basically became to them woke, which is nonsense.
It's not her boobs.
And now she's getting billions
it's
of
her
screens
attitude too.
on Disney Plus.
It's not
She's the
misogyny
antidote.
to like boobs, by the way. I like boobs.
And by the way,
I happen to
look,
have
I think as Nerdrotic just pointed out, with
it's
Sydney
like
Sweeney, it's not just about her cleavage. It's about the fact she's worked out what to say that is going to resonate with people in a way that is now leading this debate. And good on her.
Not her acting, not her
And her acting, and her beauty,
Oh, okay.
and
I wanted to put her talent out there. I just wanna
acting,
speak on her
talent, beauty,
Okay.
and an attitude that is resonating. And she's a breath of fresh air. Thank God for Sydney Sweeney, and thank God for Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, Esther, and even you, Ernest. Even you. Thank you all very much for a spirited debate. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Change the title of your book, Ernest, for God's sake, man.
It's working.
Oh man, I feel bad for that guy. I do. Even you. Yeah, I do. I feel bad for the guy. And it's like the problem is that like nobody wants to be on the side of the person. Like everybody else is joking and having fun with this. People like this dude are just like so uptight. They have like no sense of humor. They can't relax. It's just, they're just unpleasant to be around. There's a video. I figured I'd watch this since obviously people have linked it to me. They wanted me to see it. There it is. Ernest reminds me of PC Principal. Yeah, exactly. Like, just try to have fun. Try to enjoy yourself. Don't get too upset or mad about everything.